Hi, thank you so much for joining me live. I host these chats titled Wellness Wednesdays for minorities in STEM every 2 weeks because really it is my deepest belief that self-care in the form of equipping oneself with the right personal and professional development tools is anything but indulgent. Self-care involves prioritizing one's well-being. It is a comprehensive concept which, if practiced correctly, enhances our relationship with ourselves, others, and our immediate environment. With my series, I hope to challenge the norm with the audacious notion that to succeed, you have to take utmost care of yourself first, intellectually, socially, spiritually, and physically, before anything else, particularly amongst us minorities. With that, I would like to introduce my first guest. My guest, Kat. Kat graduated from UCLA in 2019 with a degree in electrical engineering. During her time there, she was a part-time intern at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, or JPL. She is now a full-time engineer at JPL and has worked on missions such as the Mars Perseverance Rover, as well as Europa Clipper. Today, we'll be chatting about confidence in the workplace, vulnerability online, as well as perfection. So I'm going to add her right now. Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you so much for joining me. I was like a little nervous before this talk. I was like, she's going to come online.
No, thank you for having me.
Okay, so are you ready to jump in?
Yes, ready.
Okay, perfect. So we'll first begin with a little introduction about yourself that's, colorful or quirky. I've already given your official kind of bio or background.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to kind of have you share something that people regularly wouldn't necessarily know about you.
Okay. So you wouldn't know it unless you looked at my shelves here, but I am a Stephen King book collector.
Okay.
So this entire shelf and this entire shelf are all Stephen King books. I love his books. Every time I find like a first edition, it is like Christmas to me. I am so happy. And then the top shelf, these are all my thrillers. So pretty much this entire bookshelf is all like either Stephen King or thrillers or space books. So
Okay.
that's pretty much me.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Okay, so again, I kind of introduced your background, but I would love to know about your STEM interest and why you chose the path that you did. Specifically, I'd love to kind of know about the way in which you want your work in STEM to make a difference and how your specific school or research combinations or internship choices have really helped to manifest that interest.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I have always been really passionate about space. So I don't remember a time where I wasn't, looking up at the stars and just trying to figure things out and think about everything. And those questions were just so big to me and I couldn't comprehend. And the biggest thing that I wanted out of my life was to help get us as humanity a little bit closer to just finding a little bit more about our universe, about our solar system. Um, and I think that this really went really well and hand in hand with my passion that I later on developed for technology. I'm the kind of person where I don't like not understanding something.
Yeah.
So when I'm in school and if somebody's telling me like, "Oh, well you just have to memorize this. Like this is just the way it is." I don't like that. That's
Mhm.
not the way that I work. I don't like to memorize anything. For example, formulas, math formulas, I don't like to memorize those. I want to understand how it was that they were derived. Where did they come from? How did the person who came up with this come up with this? And that
Mhm.
helps me so much because next time I need it, I know how to get it. I don't have to memorize it. Um, and I think that this really went perfectly with my love for engineering, which developed as I got older.
Mhm.
And it actually started with cameras because I would look at a digital camera. I didn't understand it. Like how is it possible that you're looking through, this is what you're seeing, and now you have a digital image of it, right? It didn't make
Mm-hmm.
sense to me when I was younger. So that's kind of where it started, where I wanted to know how it was that somebody like you or me
Mm-hmm.
was sitting down with a group of other people that are just like you and me and coming up with these amazing things like the phones that we have in front of us or the TVs that we watch in the afternoons, like I needed to know
Mm-hmm.
how that worked. And when I found all of that, and I think that growing up, my mom has always really encouraged me that you don't have to just pick one thing. You don't have to just be an electrical engineer, or you don't
Or
have
be in
to,
a box. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, there was no question. Like I would tell people, I'm going to be an electrical engineer, but it's going to be for space. Like
Mm-hmm.
even before starting my degree, that's what I've been saying. Like I'm going to apply it to space. So that's really kind of where all that started. And I never changed my mind. Like the more that I went through it, the more that I realized, like, yeah, this is it. This is what I really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But coming back to your question about what kind of impact that I want to make, when I graduated college, college was really stressful for me and it was a really difficult experience. And when I graduated, obviously I was relieved to finally be done and finally be starting my life as an engineer. And, it's the next step of my life, everything I've been working towards. But it didn't feel enough to me because I was still looking around and not seeing anybody else that looked like me around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there are so many people out there that have the same goals as me, that had the same passions as me. I know that there's little girls out there that are looking up at the stars and they're looking at their phones and thinking, how does this work? I know they're out there. And the thought of them not having the support that they need in order to actually take action towards those goals, that is just so painful to me. And that's why I decided to start all of this. I call it my part-time job because it really is. It
It
takes a
really
lot of
is.
my
Yes.
spare
Yeah.
time. And yeah, that's how I got here.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that, especially the little anecdote with the camera, because I don't think it's like ever a single moment, but it's the curiosity that like builds up to that moment. So I loved how you said that. All right. So I think I feel really good about jumping into the topic at hand. And in particular, I wanted to talk about confidence first.
Hmm.
So, the first thing that I kind of wanted you to unpack was the transition from your colleges, UCLA to JPL, and what it was kind of like having challenging experiences at university where, because it's a academically rigorous program, you build an identity of sometimes succeeding in classes and sometimes not. So it's
Yes.
never, it might not look like a grade sheet of full A's, but you get opportunities at places like JPL, and maybe at places like JPL, your work peers come from all kinds of institutions
Hmm.
with with different academic rigor, such that maybe in their time at their university, they didn't feel quite as broken or crushed by the system. And so they're coming into the same place of work as you,
Hmm.
uh, intact. And suddenly you're working on the same problems, and maybe work isn't as challenging because there are no extra layers that university puts on us. So could we talk a little bit about what you experienced particularly, and looking over your shoulder being like, that person's really confident, what am I doing wrong, or how else should I be perceiving this situation?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So when I was at UCLA, like I said, it's extremely rigorous and it's the quarter system. So you have 10 weeks. A lot of the time, it'll be the exact same material that someone will cover in a semester, but we'll cover it in 10 weeks. So it's a lot. And if you fall behind, you pretty much don't catch back up. You're playing catch up the whole time. You're not able to really fully grasp the newer concepts because you're still trying to catch up over here. So it's really difficult. And on top of all that, it's all of your different classes. Maybe you have a part-time job or an internship. You're not supposed to be getting any help, right? So when you get your homework assignments, a lot of the times they'll tell you this is individual, this is not group work. So it can be really, really stressful, and it can pretty much break you down, which that happened to me quite a few times. Like I broke down many, many times. There were several times where I didn't know what to do because this is the field that I love. This is what I want to do. I can't imagine myself doing anything different. And yet, my institution is telling me, you're not good enough. You're not passing this test. You're not passing this homework. Maybe you don't belong here. That's sort of the way that I was interpreting those results as they were coming back. And that can feel terrible, especially when you have been working for this pretty much all your life. And I think that it was really interesting for me to see the transition to JPL or to a full-time job, because it's no longer like that. You are no longer being given an assignment and you're not being told, this is for you to do 100% on your own. You can't ask any of your classmates anything. That's not how it works out in engineering.
There's so much more group work. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's important, right? Because we're humans. We make mistakes. We're not perfect. We're going to make a mistake eventually. Like, it's going to happen. I've made mistakes on the job before. It happens to everybody. So it's really important that we work together, that we sort of act as sanity checks to each other. And I think that that's the part that's the most stressful in school, where you feel like you're on your own. You feel like maybe sometimes you're just trying to stay afloat and you're not really able to get any help. You feel guilty sometimes if you are working on something with somebody else because you're not supposed to be. But when you're actually in the workplace, it's not like that at all. I think there's a really big disconnect with that going on.
Right. And usually as minorities in STEM or first generation college students, if they have nothing else to go off of, how do they kind of form a basis of, well, actually, when I get that dream job or dream internship of sending something to Mars, I'm going to work in a really collaborative environment, and that this is not a reflection of who I will be in the workplace.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Because so for me, when I first started at UCLA, I was struggling to keep that 3.0. I was not used to the quarter system. It was my first time being away from home. I am Mexican. Family is everything to us. A lot of Mexican women don't leave home until they're married. And so for me, it was kind of breaking a lot of generational cycles that have been present pretty much all the way back for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's a lot of pressure. I was on a scholarship, so
and you have to keep that, and
you have to keep that GPA. If you lose the GPA, you lose the scholarship. On top of that, I'm the oldest in my family. I have younger siblings. I didn't want them to look at me, and I was scared of failing pretty much for everybody else except other than myself, because I, as the older sister, I'm used to sort of being that person, that role model for everybody else. And I think that this was the first time that I was on my own and focusing on myself, that I couldn't shake that. I was still worrying about everybody else, and that pressure was immense.
Absolutely. And so what I kind of wanted to talk about for really anyone listening right now is unpacking it in two phases. So for the people that are still in school, and then for the people who have gone through this and are at work and show up as a different person at work because they don't think they are either worthy of certain opportunities. Oh my gosh, my voice.
You're fine.
Wow, sorry. They don't think they're worthy of certain opportunities, or maybe are second guessing themselves and don't show up as their full selves because of the conditioning that they've gone through. So if you had advice, let's maybe talk about like just in the workplace first.
Hmm.
So going through that in at university, how do you kind of change your mindset around who you are at work, being like, well, we all got here, so why am I thinking that I'm like not as competent?
Yeah. I think this is a big problem that happens, especially with minority students.
Yeah.
And a big reason for that is that you're now in the workplace and you're working with a lot of people that are older than you when you start out. And for me, I think that's something that was really difficult was being in in a meeting or in a conference room with a lot of different engineers that were much older than me. I was really scared to speak up about something that maybe I thought something could be done better a different way, or maybe I just had an idea that could make things so much easier. I was scared to say that because I thought, okay, well, these engineers have 20 plus years of experience. I'm sure they thought of that. So me saying it is probably not necessary. Like there's probably a reason for it. And then 2 weeks would go by, we're having issues. Somebody else brings up the exact same thing I thought of during the meeting, and everyone's like, oh, amazing, let's do that. That's such a great idea. How did we not think
Yeah.
of that? And it's kind of like, oh my goodness, I think it really has a lot to do with the way that I was brought up to always respect my elders and also to always kind of, like the way that we respond to authority. We sort of put ourselves in a corner a little bit, like if your mom or your dad is saying something, then that's because that's the way it is. So for me, coming into this environment with a lot of older senior level engineers, it was really difficult for me to find my voice with that because of the way that I was brought up. I was apologizing all the time for all kinds of things that nobody else is apologizing for. Say I made a tiny little typo. To me, it was like, I am so sorry. I am not going to do this again. Like, please, don't fire me. So I feel like I would overreact so much for the smallest things. And that has to do a lot with, like I said, just the way that our cultures are. Um, and it's really important, extremely important for us when we get to these different environments to analyze those different types of things that we have been taught and which ones are hurting you and which ones are benefiting you.
Hmm.
Like, for example, I'm not saying don't respect your elders. Absolutely not. Like, I respect everybody and everybody's opinion. However, that doesn't mean that you should keep your mouth shut, right? Like in
Right.
Spanish, there's the saying, which is calladita te ves más bonita. So quiet, you look prettier. And that's what I grew up with. Quiet, you look prettier. So that's something that I've had to get out of my head. And it's been difficult. It's been a difficult road, but it's really important, especially if we want to, grow in these technical roles.
Right. And so I think my biggest takeaway from what you said just now was that despite like maybe engineering culture of like, okay, go faster or, don't slow down, you need to like take a step back, particularly as a minority in STEM, to be introspective, to analyze
Mm-hmm.
how you're showing up in these spaces, because without that, maybe you're not tapping into your fullest potential. And you're maybe not even thinking about it because you're
Yeah.
working so hard, you're moving so fast. You need to pause. You need to take a step back and you need to check in with yourself. And so I kind of now want to backtrack to who you were at UCLA and any advice you'd have for students that aren't in the workforce and when they really feel like the system is against them, because oftentimes it is. It's made for like
Mhm.
cookie cutter um, people, and sometimes we don't fit in. And what words of encouragement or advice would you have for someone um, to kind of say that, hey, it does get better, but here's what you can do to make your circumstance now feel better as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, happy to report that who I was when I was in college, we don't know her anymore.
Who is she?
Who I don't know who that was.
Yeah.
Um, But okay, so let me tell you my UCLA story. When I got to UCLA and I took my first midterm, I failed it, but I failed it so badly that in a class of 200, I'm pretty sure I was either the worst test score or second or third to worst. I
I've been
failed
there
that.
before.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if you all know that moment, right, when you're seeing the statistics that the professor puts up and you see the lowest score and the highest score, you look at the lowest and you're like, ooh, who's that? And then you get it back and it's you. That does not feel good. So those days, coupled with this being my very first quarter at UCLA, right? Like I was not used to the quarter system at all. I was not used to being away from home. I was not used to being on my own. I was not used to all of the pressure. I wasn't expecting all of that pressure to be on me for me to succeed, for me to keep my scholarship, for me to um prove myself as one of the only women and one of the only Mexican women in the room. So all of that was not helping at all. And I think that a big reason for my rocky start was that I didn't realize it sooner that I was going to have to give myself the time for this period of transition. And the the worse that I was doing as I started, the more pressure and the worse that I was feeling, and the more that I started to feel that I didn't belong. And sort of as, kind of like the universe telling me, hey, I don't know how many more signs you need for you to give it up because I keep giving them to you and you keep on not taking them. That's the way that I felt about it.
It's
And
like they will keep showing you the lesson until you learn it.
yeah, that's how I
Yeah.
thought. That's what I thought it was. Um, but then that's kind of when I started to realize, like, okay, first of all, I was not a perfect person coming into this. And I think that all of those little habits that I had before, which, not necessarily they were working, but they were working enough to get me to where I currently was. Now, coupled with everything else that I had to deal with, I just broke. And there was a time where essentially I needed to decide, well, either I'm going to give in or I'm going to look into myself and figure out what's going on. Because clearly I can't keep going the way that I'm going. It's not working out. And I'm not going to get out of here the way that I want to if I keep going like this. I think that's one of the most important things where we keep saying to ourselves, right? Well, I study 24/7. I spend every single waking minute reading my textbooks or doing my homework. And you think, well, I can't give anymore. But it's not about giving more. It's about analyzing what you've been giving, and maybe you're not giving it in the right way. Maybe you're not giving it in the right way for you. And that's the thing that's really difficult to realize that. Um, that's what I had to do. I had to give up a lot of really unhealthy habits. At the peak of it, I was drinking up to 5 energy drinks a day. That's a lot. That's,
That's a lot.
and not only that, but like one of the biggest side effects of these energy drinks is irritability, um, stress. I already have anxiety. And so I was just even more anxious on top of that. So it's that, it's realizing what are these things that I'm doing that are actually hurting me and I think they're helping me. I think I need them, but they're actually really toxic to my life and my goals right now. That's what I had to really unpack at the time. And once I did that, I became a completely different person. I started sleeping I started sleeping first of all, period. But I started giving myself the hours of sleep that I needed. I started eating well because what were the first things I was cutting out? Sleep and eating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so once I started to do that and treat them as priorities, I was needing to study less because when I was studying, I was retaining everything. When I was doing homework, I was understanding everything. When I was in class, I was alert, I was paying attention, I was awake. So it's that's what we need to do when we're in a time like this. It's not, well, I need to give more. No. What are you giving and how are you giving it? That's what you need to analyze.
Right. And oftentimes the bug-eyed, dark, like under eye bags engineer aesthetic is not what is serving us.
Hmm.
And everything you said was so useful. Thank you so much. I think I want to talk a little bit about the other topic now in terms of vulnerability and perfection.
Hmm.
And in shifting to talking about your online platform, I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is that you're one of the most compassionate people online, and your platform is built around vulnerability as well as accessibility for dual language speakers. And I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about your mission first across your platforms. When you
Hmm.
were uh, carving that out, what did that look like, and what is it?
Yeah. So when I started, I knew that I had the goal of helping others. Um, I'm a big sister. I will always be a big sister. And so it's kind of in my nature to be that big sister for others. And that's essentially what I wanted. I wanted to be a big sister to all of those people who are going to come after me. And they maybe don't have that person in their life. Maybe their parents haven't gone to college before. Maybe their siblings haven't gone to college before, or maybe they're the oldest, but they haven't gotten there yet. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what I wanted. I wanted to be that person for them because I know how difficult it is to be the first. Um, and I know how much easier it is for my siblings and the people in my life not being the first. So that's what I wanted. That was my mission. And I wasn't really sure how I was going to do it when I started. I sort of just started posting and trying to see, okay, what what is it that people need? What is it that people want? What is really resonating? And that's sort of how I did it. I did some trial and error. And but the posts where I would talk about the realities of my college life and the realities of uh, you know, anxiety, stress, all of those things, those were what were really resonating with people. And so that's kind of what made me realize that this is something that's not very common. When you're in college, a lot of times you feel like you're the only one struggling. And why is that? Because nobody around you wants to admit that they're struggling too. Everyone wants to be that person that's doing really well. And until somebody admits, like, oh, I'm really having a hard time, then a bunch of other people, maybe in your study group, will be like, oh, me too. Like, oh, I have no idea what's going on. But if you don't really know each other too well, that's not something that you admit to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really makes us feel so alone because we think we're the only ones. And that's what I wanted to show people. You're not the only one. And not only am I going to tell you everything that I went through and how many times I failed, how many times I struggled, all the obstacles I've had to face, and I'm also going to show you where I am now because I want you to see it's okay to fail. It's okay to have those struggles. It's okay to have those hurdles, and you can be here too, where I am now. You don't have to be perfect.
Absolutely. And so I loved how you kind of elaborated on the ways in which you craft your message and your captions and the topics that you speak on. But can you talk a little bit more to why you felt like this was valuable, but also how it made you a better engineer at work? How has being vulnerable online directly translated to you showing up as a better person for Europa Clipper?
Yeah. So, okay, this may come as a little bit of a shock, but the person you are seeing here today talking to you, this is not who I was when I started. And I started a little bit over a year ago. When I posted my first story, oh my goodness, I think I recorded it 3 different times. I was so quiet. I was so shy. I didn't know what to say. I kept over analyzing every little thing that I had said because I was just so scared. I'm
And this
actually
is you like recording a story to post where you're like speaking to someone rather than curating other things and sharing it on your story. This is you showing up, like talking to your audience.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah. Um, and I was just really scared. It was when I was first starting. I'm a huge introvert. I I have like pretty bad social anxiety. And it's something that this platform has really helped me with. And as somebody who is actually a really quiet person and somebody that is okay with not meeting any strangers ever, it's helped me so much because I love meeting people now. I am now the person where if somebody DMs me and I see that they need somebody or they need a friend or they need someone to talk to, I'm going to be the first one to say, let's schedule a call. Let's FaceTime. Let's talk about this. And this has completely translated over to the workplace because I am so confident at work now. It has helped a lot. Like I mentioned earlier, right? When it comes to meetings, I am not that shy, quiet person in the corner anymore. If I have something to say, I'm going to say it. And I think that it's a really big reason why I've been able to climb up to the position of responsibility that I have now because I speak up now. If I want something, I'm going to say that I want it. Or if I think a particular project is going to be great for me, I'm going to say it. And that's not who I was before I started this platform. So I am really, really grateful to it and to myself for putting myself out there because that's really not the kind of person that I am.
Right. Okay, so I also wanted to talk a little bit about deconstructing the notion of a perfect engineer online. And I think we've been hinting at this from the start with confidence and then vulnerability, but in terms of unpacking perfection, I think there's again an archetype that we think of that is usually male, maybe not of a different skin color, that we have in our heads of someone that we thought looked like the perfect engineer based on things that we've consumed growing up, like media or what we see in the news or the people that we see in power having these jobs. And so when we show up looking different and we actively choose to say, I'm not perfect, instead of fighting for perfection, what does that look like? And how has not wanting or needing to be perfect and being able to say, hey, I make mistakes, like at work and online very publicly with thousands of people following you, how has that translated to you becoming actually a better engineer and a better leader at work?
Yeah, no, I love that question. I think the first time that I made a mistake, a pretty big mistake, I was really surprised. Obviously I was super apologetic and I wanted to fix it right away. That's the number one thing you have to do when you make a mistake is you fix it and you find the best way to fix it. But then I started seeing how others were reacting to my mistakes. And it was essentially understandable, right? So that's the way that they were reacting, like, oh, okay, you made the mistake, so how are you going to fix it? Okay, so give me your game plan. Let's put that to work. It wasn't, oh my goodness, you're the worst engineer I've ever met. How could you make such a mistake? Never, ever. And then I started seeing how my coworkers and my leads were reacting to mistakes they made. And again, nobody was saying, oh my goodness, you messed up. That is terrible. I can't believe you did that. They were coming to us saying, oh, hey, I made a mistake here. This is what it's actually supposed to be. This is what needs to be fixed. I'm going to be delegating these tasks to you, and you, and let's get to it. It was very kind of like, it was just business, right?
It was like a blip in a regular work day that kind of felt like a meteor to you.
Yeah, exactly. And I started to sort of just look at that and how it really doesn't have to be this huge thing that is just stressing me out and making me think I'm going to get fired. It wasn't like that at all. So that's when I started to realize, okay, well, why do I have this feeling like the whole world is going to end because I made one little mistake? And it kind of just went back to everything that I had already spoken about, like when it came to UCLA and doing bad on a test and feeling like I didn't belong there because of that. And I think that that's really when I started to realize, again, that disconnect between academia and the workplace. And I wanted to make sure that people knew that no, it's not that you don't belong here if you make a mistake. Like it's impossible for us to not make mistakes. We are human. We are going to make mistakes. Sometimes we're tired. Sometimes you could have sworn that you checked this 50 times and then you checked this exact thing a million times, and yet there it is. You don't know how it happened, but there it is, a typo. And you ordered maybe 100 of these components with the wrong name because of a typo, but you checked it 50 times. Like sometimes it just happens.
Yeah.
So it's really important to learn how to react to your mistakes. That's a really big and important skill that you're going to have to learn in the workplace. And if I can start helping people now who are still in college or maybe are interns, then they are going to be so much better as engineers in the workplace, understanding that to begin with, understanding how to deal with their mistakes. And I saw that a lot so I have an intern right now, and he made a mistake recently that was similar. We ordered the wrong part due to a typo on a part number. And, I felt so bad for him because the way he was reacting, oh my goodness, like I feel like he thought we were about to like fire him on the spot or something. So, I took the time to make sure that he understood the thing about mistakes. They're normal. How do we react to them? Saying, I am so sorry, this isn't going to happen again. That's not true, first of all. It is going to happen again. And it's also not necessary. What's necessary is for you to fix it. So that's what you should focus on. And that's what's really important.
Right. And I think what you said made me think of something that I've kind of been like writing about is if we kind of let go of needing to be perfect and, not speaking to our mistakes, if we just show up as the person that talks about it from the start, then you're always going to just be that person. Like people are going to take you in as you are. No one's going to be like, oh, like that's really odd or strange. No, that's just like who you are. You're like showing up and owning every single mistake you're making because it's not the end of the world. Yeah, thank you so much for speaking to that. And I honestly think we've unpacked the two topics really, really well, and I feel really good about that. So I have two last kind of ending questions.
Okay.
So the first one being, what is your morning or nighttime routine, and what helps you bounce back when you fall off track?
Okay. So my morning routine is I try to wake up maybe like 30 minutes before I actually have to get out of bed, because getting out of bed is really hard for me, especially in the winter. So if I give myself enough time to just kind of like lay there, then that's good for me. That's what
Perfect.
I do. So like today I had to get up earlier for this. So my alarm was even 30 minutes earlier than usual. So I could just lay there and chill. And then I try to have everything ready that I need for work starting with the night before, because I'm that person who in the morning, even if I try my hardest to be out the door on time, like something always comes up. So if I have everything ready, then that helps me a lot. And then my nighttime routine, I actually try to be in bed by 9:40 at the latest, because I like to read every night. So I'm reading Walden right now by Henry David Thoreau. And it's actually a pretty it's a hard read because I think it was written in 1850.
A while ago.
So yeah, a little while ago. So for books like that, I give myself a little bit more time because otherwise I get sleepy. So yeah, those are my routines. And then what's the other question?
What helps you get back on track if you fall off on track? So if you don't wake up on time, if you are so busy with work that you're not giving yourself enough time to fall asleep and read before bed, what helps you kind of get back on the train?
It's really important for me to be adaptable because these things happen, right? And so I'm really grateful that I have a job where I can come in pretty much, unless I have to be testing in the lab at a certain hour. Other than that, my hours are pretty flexible. So if, for example, something happened the night before and I'm not going to be able to get my good sleep, then I kind of just shift things a little bit the next day, make sure that everyone's aware. So it's sort of one of those things where I have to be adapting on the spot, but I have learned from all of the experiences that I've had that sleep is extremely a priority. It is a huge priority.
Number one.
As is food. So those two things, they are my top priority. If they are not met, then I know that the next day is not going to be very productive. So I try to do what I can in order to make sure that those are my number one priorities.
Right. No, I love that. And I think my final question for you really is, what does wellness mean to you as an engineer?
I think that to me, it means taking a big, long look at ourselves. Just because we have been taught something doesn't mean that it's right. Just because something has been done a certain way for generations and generations and generations doesn't mean that it's right. And just because we went through an entire educational system for all of the years that we went through, being taught pretty much in the same way to everybody doesn't mean that that's the way that we learn best. So it's really important for me, and it's the way that what I consider wellness is to take a look at ourselves. How do I learn best? How do I rest best? What is actually restful for me? How am I actually productive? What does the environment look like? Is it being around a lot of people? Is it being quiet in my room? I think these are questions that a lot of us have never really asked ourselves before.
Absolutely.
And if you have a hard time with any one of those, maybe you have a hard time focusing at home, you need to ask yourself why. Is that maybe just not the right environment for you? Do you need to find the right environment for you? And that's something that I've been focusing on during this time that we've been working from home for so long. And that, I think, is truly wellness, is asking ourselves, maybe for the first time, what do I need?
No, absolutely. And I think for me as an international student, what I've learned is that asking yourself is more important than asking others, because it absolutely does not look the same. And I just loved your answer so, so much. Thank you so much for your time. Those are all my questions. And I will be saving this for everyone asking on the chat. And we have these talks every 2 weeks with a different person who's a minority in engineering. And Kat, I'm so grateful for your time and all your thoughtful responses, and for how you make sure that I personally show up as authentically and compassionately as possible. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.
And all the comments just have so many like lovely things being said to you, and I hope you get a chance to read them later.
No, thank you everyone for being here.
Okay, perfect. Have the best day. I'm gonna end the live now.
Bye.
Bye.